Good evening. All right, welcome. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start bringing out the salads and then your dinners, and we are going to have a lot of fun tonight. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Bill Saltzman. I serve as the president for the board of the St. Louis Media History Foundation. Thank you very much. Thank you on behalf of the board. Thank you for being here. Please take a moment to look around the room. You are surrounded by greatness tonight. You can't always say that, at least maybe I should say that because I'm married, but I don't say it enough. But if you look around this room, you are surrounded by greatness. And we have the honor tonight to induct 17 new members to the St. Louis Media History Hall of Fame. Let's hear it for our 17 inductees. So here's the flow of the evening. We're going to give the servers a few minutes to bring you your salads and go ahead and start eating. And then we'll get started with the inductions in just a little short while. You will continue eating while we're presenting because otherwise with 17 folks to induct tonight, it would be a very long evening. So we're gonna do double duty on that. I will share one announcement about a change in plans. We all know that during COVID, we've learned to deal with agility, right? Our MC, Betsy Bruce, let us know yesterday that she had a terrible case of laryngitis and she would make a game day decision on whether she would be with us today. Today we found out the laryngitis is still with her. So she sends her regrets. She wishes she could be here tonight. She is a member of the St. Louis Media Hall of Fame. But not to worry, our fearless executive director and the founder of the foundation, Frank Absher, will be our MC, and we'll bring him up shortly. So please enjoy your salads, and we'll start shortly. Thank you for being here. Good evening again. So please continue to eat, and we're going to go ahead and start our program. Once again, thank you so much for being here. Can't tell you how excited we are to be back together in person after 2.5 years of not being able to do this. So really happy that you're here. My role as president of the foundation is just to share a few opening announcements and then introduce our MC. So a few things of interest. This is breaking news that I hope you will be happy with. The bar will remain open until 8:30. And in a related developing story, the restrooms are down the hall and to the left. So if you haven't found them yet, it's a bit of a hike. So just keep walking down the hall and you will find those. We will take a break midway through our program tonight. Let you stretch your legs, refresh your drink, refresh your bids at the silent auction table, and we'll resume. Sound like a good plan? Wow. That's the most applause I've had in 2.5 years, so thank you for that. Let's talk about the St. Louis Media History Foundation. It began in 2010 with a mission to collect, preserve, archive, and inform the public about the rich history and the lasting impact of the St. Louis media. And that covers print, television, radio, advertising, PR, and digital. This is a scruffy little 501c3 outfit. We don't have an office, we don't have a lot of paid staff, but we have a bunch of committed volunteers and members of the media industry who see the value in preserving what all of you have accomplished in this room. So I will introduce the board in just a moment, but this scrappy little foundation works hard to preserve the work of everyone in this room that otherwise would be lost. One individual had the vision and the persistence to make this happen, and that is our founder and executive director, Frank Hatcher. Frank, would you stand and be recognized? So tonight's induction dinner is made possible by the work and support of our foundation board. And as I said, these are some of the most generous and committed volunteers you will ever meet. By the way, our board has several open seats right now, and we would love to have you consider joining us to continue in this work. And we are currently in need of volunteers to help us sort, catalog, and archive our collection of over 10,000 items in the media history collection. So if you have a few hours or a few weeks this summer and would like to help us, please see a member of the board tonight, or see Frank or Carrie, and we'll be glad to set you up. I'd like to introduce you to our board very quickly. Please hold your applause until they've all been introduced. If they would please stand. Dan Martin is our board vice president and a member of the St. Louis Media History Foundation. Mark Pierce is our board secretary. Pat Crow is our board treasurer. And our remaining board members are Susie Anderson Bauer, Bob Byrne, Dan Dillon, Dave Garino, Tim Lawler, Avis Meyer, Ken Olemeyer, running our AV tonight, and live streaming, right, Ken?
We are live streaming.
So we're on YouTube. Everybody behave, you are on YouTube tonight. Eric Rothenbuehler, our immediate past president of the board, Mark Sableman, and Ginny Westmoreland. Let's hear it for this board. I'd like to tell you about one more board member who is with us tonight in spirit. You might have noticed at the silent auction table, there's a ball of yarn next to two books written by Anne Levins Pollock. Anne passed away unexpectedly in April and was a member of our board. Anne was a popular food writer and author of books about the St. Louis food scene and restaurants, and her son donated her last known 2 signed copies of her latest books for tonight's auction. So you will find those out there next to the ball of yarn. Why the ball of yarn? Well, Anne was a tireless worker for the foundation, and she not only spun yarns in her stories about restaurants, she spun yarn and knit yarn as we had our board meetings. So Anne was the person to always want to talk about what food we were going to have at events like this. She would be at the front table to greet you when you checked in. And she would simultaneously be knitting items of clothing for her family and friends. And Anne loved serving on this board, and we counted Anne as a good friend. So tonight, instead of raising a glass in her memory, if you would, please raise a fork. This is in memory of a talented writer and dedicated force of nature, Anne Levins Pollock. To Anne. And Anne, please save us a place in the dessert line. So tonight is special for a lot of reasons, including the fact this is our first in-person gathering in over 2 years. In 2020, we inducted Hall of Fame members, and for the first time had to figure out how to do that virtually. And it's a beautiful produced show you can still see on YouTube, but it's not the same as being in person. And so we do want to take just a moment to recognize those 2020 Hall of Fame inductees who are with us here tonight. Carol Carper, would you please stand? Dan Martin, would you please stand? 2020 inductees to the History Hall of Fame. And we have a few other Hall of Famers with us tonight. If they would please stand. Dave Garino, Ted Simmons, Jerry Mandel, please stand. And one more, Sharon Stevens, would you please stand? So we have a few sponsors to thank. Nestle Purina Pet Care is a presenting sponsor. Thank you. Please adopt your dog or cat. The Starcroft Disability Institute is with us tonight. Thank you for sponsoring the table. And Webster University School of Communications. Thank you. And finally, thank you to each and every one of you for making an effort to be here tonight. We could not do this without you, and we really appreciate you coming out to help make this a special night. Now, as I mentioned, I was all set to introduce Betsy Bruce as your MC for tonight, and we had a wonderful bio written for her, and life does what life does, and Betsy has a bad case of laryngitis, and instead, we will have Frank Apsher as our MC tonight. We didn't have a prepared bio for Frank, so I did what all of us in the media do now. I Googled it, right? And let me see what I found. Frank, is this right? Frank Apsher went up and down the dial before landing at WKRP in Cincinnati alongside Dr. Johnny Fever. Is that? Okay. And then Frank could turn the world on with a smile by working at the WJN TV newsroom alongside Ted Baxter. That was your second job, correct? No? I guess we either need a new fact checker or a new joke writer, maybe both on the foundation. So let's talk about who Frank really is. If you don't know Frank's story, it's a pretty good one. Frank Apsher grew up in Nashville, Illinois. Am I right? All right. This one's been checked. And he went off to college at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, without a clear idea of what it was he was going to do. It was there a woman told him that he had a nice voice and he should try radio. And as Frank says, that was that. He applied for radio jobs, but because of his lack of experience, couldn't get hired until one day when a local station called in a panic and said, "Can you come in right now? Our regular DJ has had too much to drink." And that day, Frank went on the air, and he's never turned the microphone off since. So that's a true story. So Frank's decades-long radio career took him from the Midwest to Alaska, and even 4 years in the Air Force Armed Services Radio. And he's worked for stations that include KMOX, WIBV, and KADI. Frank is more passionate about preserving the history of St. Louis media than anyone I've ever met, and for that, we are very grateful. Would you welcome up to the microphone our MC for this evening, Frank Apsher.
I did his homework on me, geez. So this evening is sort of based on our experience in the past. We've learned that if we don't get started right away giving out the awards, people fall asleep. And some of them nod and fall into their places messy. So we're going to do the awards as we're eating and being served, and I hope you'll be patient with us because of that. I do want to also point out and thank very much the serving staff here. You folks are working under difficult conditions. I do have prepared remarks thanks to Avis Meyer, who is a wonderful writer, and Ken Olemeyer, who's a good editor. We put some stuff together that I hope you'll enjoy. The inductees are joining a very impressive list of people who've been honored in the past: legendary broadcasters, newspaper reporters, editors, advertising and PR executives already enshrined in our Hall of Fame. It is online, but our website was hacked by Russian hackers, and we've had to completely rebuild it. So we do have material online, but we ask you to be patient. And those of you who are inducted tonight, we will notify you as soon as your entries are posted online. The criterion to be voted into the Hall of Fame is relatively easy. You have to have made a significant contribution or impact in our industry. And each of the class of 2022 inductees has done just that. Tonight's inductees, this is important, were selected by our board from a long list of people who were nominated. And it is truly a case of being honored by your peers. That's important. You weren't elected because you could bring people to our tables. You weren't elected because we would expect a lot of money donated, although we won't turn that down. You were honored because of what you have done, and you're being recognized by people who know what you've done. We're proud to recognize your work and your contributions, your accomplishments as well. Here for your inductees is the way we're going to do things tonight. I'll introduce each inductee. We'll invite you to come up here. If you'd like to make remarks, you're more than welcome to. After your remarks and after we've introduced you, you simply go down the stairs here, where you'll be presented with your membership certificate and get your picture taken in front of this fancy little curtain. Our first inductee of the evening is William Freivogel. He's a professor. He's a former director of the School of Journalism at SIU in Carbondale, and he is the publisher of the Gateway Journalism Review. He worked for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch for 34 years and lived to tell about it. Served as assistant bureau chief in Washington and deputy editorial editor. Freivogel won the APA's Silver Gavel Award in 2016 for legal analyses written for St. Louis Public Radio about the death of Michael Brown. His work with the Gateway Journalism Review's 1857 project in 2020 won a Sigma Delta Chi Award and an honorable mention for a Silver Gavel. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Bill Freivogel. Bill.
Well, they didn't warn me I was going to be first. Gotta get my little speech out. I hope I don't go too long and set a bad example. I don't think I will. So thanks so much for this honor. It's good to see so many journalists in the room whom I know. When Margie and I, Margie, my wife, and I walked into the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newsroom in October of 1971, we had no inkling of the revolutionary changes in communications and in the media industry that would alter our lives. I tell my students at SIU that it's a communications revolution more profound than anything since Gutenberg and the movable press half a millennium ago. When Margie and I walked into the newsroom, it was a newsroom where women started on the women's page. Florence, I don't know whether that included you or not, but women started on the women's page. There were almost all the men on the city desk were, all the reporters on the city desk were men, all the editors were men. Many St. Louisans got the Globe on their lawn in the morning and the Post in the afternoon. Thinking back on my half century of reporting, there's a lot there. I wrote a lot more stories about bad things, bad news than good news. Citizens killed by the police, city officials killed by citizens, dioxin contamination of Missouri, defense fraud, long fights about school desegregation, Waco, impeachments, contested elections, 9/11, questionable wars. One thing I've learned is that the same basic stories often come back again and again. Police shootings, bail abuses, wars that shouldn't be fought, presidents who lie, and city hall corruption. I see in the audience many of the people whom I worked with, and I remember many others who contributed so much to the Post-Dispatch, the St. Louis Beacon, St. Louis Public Radio, and the Journalism Review that I now publish after Charles Klotzer. I remember Jim Millstone, Charlie Prendergast, Richard Dudman, Bill Wu, Gerald Boyd, all of whom no longer are with us. Terry Gainey, John Sawyer, Martha Shirk, Emmy Pulitzer, Bobby Duffy, Joe Manis, Mary Edwards, Don Marsh, Sarah Fensky, Paul Wagman, who's over at our table, Charles Klotzer, Linda Lockhart, Bob Joyner, Shula Newman, Dave Garino, who's on this board, Jessica Brown, Avis Meyer, who we were just talking about, Dan Martin, who's in the room, David Sheets, Harry Levins, who we honor also tonight, and most importantly, Margie, who, as you know, got here a long time before I did. When Margie and I came back from Washington in 1992, we hoped the Post-Dispatch was entering a golden age. We didn't realize that technological and market forces were about to overwhelm the newspaper industry like a gigantic hurricane crashing over a shore. The remade media world is wonderful, and it is equally terrible. All of our communications, photos, news outlets, videos are in your pocket phones, which I'll bet some of you are scrolling through because you're getting bored by this speech. But it'll be over soon. For journalists, technology offers unimagined ways to tell stories, but the information explosion is chaotic and overwhelming. There are 2.5 quintillion bytes of data created every day. Worldwide, there are 5 billion searches every day. 90% of the data the world has ever created was generated in the past 2 years. We and the generations of journalists who follow have the daunting, maybe impossible task of helping people sort through this enormous pile of information and disinformation, and to find the truth so that our democracy can find its way. I heard Condoleezza Rice say last week that January 6th encouraged her, actually, because our institutions stood up under the pressure of an ultimate stress test. I pray that she's right about that. Thank you very much.
He did all that reading the script off of his phone in his very small print. Very small print. Our next inductee is Harry Levins. Harry was born and raised in Redland, Vermont. After graduating in '63 from the University of Vermont with a degree in English, he signed on as a reporter with the Rutland Daily Herald. That's as bad as me being at KFAL in Fulton. He soon left to serve in the Army, in the infantry, lieutenant in Germany for a couple of years. He returned to the Herald as city editor back in '65. In 1969, Harry moved to Long Island's Newsday as a copy editor. In '71, he moved again, St. Louis, the Post-Dispatch. His trek at the Post began as a copy editor. Soon he became the Night Wire editor, then the Night City editor, then the city editor, and then his best-known, longest-held position, CCE, the chief copy editor. In that spot, he took on a secondary role as a writing coach, cranked out a regular staff handout called Right and Wrong. That's WRITE, Right and Wrong. Several years of that, focusing on persnickety phrases and eclectic editing. It was read far and wide in the Post-Dispatch newsroom. And he continues to write book reviews. At last count, more than 2,000 book reviews for the Post-Dispatch. You can't get the man away from his keyboard. He's married to the farmer Sarah Jane Anderson, University City. They live in Manchester and enjoy the company of their son Rob, also of Manchester, their daughter Ruth Eilerman, Shrewsbury, and their 4 grandkids. Here's Harry Levins.
As writing coach, I always told reporters, keep your prose as short as possible. With that in mind, thank you.
Let the record show that he read that without a script. Reverend Cleophus Robinson was a Baptist pastor in St. Louis for many years, as well as a renowned preacher, gospel singer, and enthusiastic promoter of gospel music among anybody who could listen to him. He was also a popular performer in the US as well as in Europe. What's this have to do with media? I'll get to that. He was born and reared in Canton, Mississippi, began singing gospel when he was 3. He attended college at Lemoyne Owen College in Memphis, came here in '56, and became pastor of the Greater Bethlehem Baptist Church until his death in 1998. In the early 1960s, Robinson was featured on a gospel program on Channel 11. That program ran for 28 years and was syndicated to more than 20 stations and cities around the country. We think, although we've not been able to confirm it, but everything points to the fact that he is probably the first African-American to host his own program on television in St. Louis. He recorded more than 20. He recorded more than 75 albums, 5 gold albums, and more than 30 singles. He was the first gospel artist to receive the Jubilee Award from the Atlanta branch of the NAACP. He sang at the White House during the President Carter administration. He appeared on the Merv Griffin Show, Dinah Shore, Sally Jesse Raphael. Please welcome Reverend Shadrach Robinson, the son of Cleophus Robinson.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here on this evening to the Hall of Fame staff and those who are recognizing my father. I have to say that it's amazing to be standing here receiving this honor, because I never thought he was that great. He was just dead to me. But amazingly, I got to travel with him, and I was able to play for him in some of the major events, got to go across the world, and it's just mind-blowing. He's been going now 24 years, and it's mind-blowing to see the recognition and the honor that he is receiving, even though he's been gone all of this time. Of course, when he started and did a lot of things, it wasn't popular for a black man to do what he was doing. So he was a trailblazer. And one thing I can say, even though I couldn't say he was that great, because he used to get on my nerves a lot, I would tell you about it at the next event. But one thing I can say I learned and I saw in my father, that he loved the Lord. He loved Jesus Christ with his heart. And because of that, that's why he was able to love people and do what he did. So on behalf of my father, thank you. My baby sister is here, Aquila, and we just wanted to be here to receive this honor and to thank you for recognizing my father. God bless you.
I want to pause, deviate from the script for a minute to say that when we started this effort to preserve media, I actually started collecting in '78, and I had no idea what it would come to. But having a foundation board of directors, setting it up as a not-for-profit, and letting all this happen as it has, the most gratifying part of it is this stuff. To be able to tell somebody, you are being recognized because you are special. I have had, I don't know how many of you remember John Rodell on Channel 5. John was ill and could not attend the ceremony. So I took the recognition to him, and he broke down and cried in his living room. He said, I can't believe people still remember me. This is what it's all about. Thank you, folks. Okay, Amy, you're up next. Amy Shaw became the president and CEO of 9 PBS Operations in February of 2020. The first woman to lead 9 in its 67-year history. She's led numerous national content initiatives, including Facing the Mortgage Crisis and the American Graduate Initiative. She created the 9 PBS media model for engagement, designed to guide the public media organizations working with community institutions. She serves on the board of PBS, Public Television Major Market Group. She's chair of Focus St. Louis's board, serves on the Webster University School of Communications Advisory Board and the Grand Center Board, and occasionally she gets to sleep. She's a member of the St. Louis Forum, International Women's Forum, and a graduate of Leadership St. Louis. In 2021, she was named by the St. Louis Business Journal as one of the 25 most influential businesswomen in St. Louis. The 9 PBS was founded, or was recognized in 2020 by the Women's Foundation of Greater St. Louis as one of the region's best places for women to work. She was an Eisenhower Zijing Fellow in 2015, spent a month in China studying the Chinese media. She's a proud alum of Bradley University, has a master's from SIU Carbondale in telecommunications. Amy Shaw.
In 1997, Fred Rogers was given the Lifetime Achievement Award by the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, the Emmys. It was the daytime Emmys. And so the audience was filled with soap opera stars, everybody dressed up in their finest. And he asked everyone to think about who had loved them into existence. Isn't that a beautiful thing? If you ever get a chance, Google it and watch it, because it's extraordinary to watch all these soap opera stars and daytime folks just sobbing as they think about who loved them. And so all of us are here because someone loved us to get up here. They loved us to get a good education, to find our path, to find our joy in the work that we do. My great colleague, Angie Carr, who's sitting right there, did an exercise with our team recently, and it was why you do this work. And so you had to figure out 6 words that answered why you do this work. And my answer is because this place grew me. Both St. Louis grew me and 9 PBS grew me. I'm a PBS kid. I can remember sitting at home on Saturday nights watching TV with my parents. Sunday nights was Masterpiece, daytime was Sesame Street. I'm sure many of you were the same. And St. Louis, we started the day with KMOX, Carol. We always got the newspaper, we got the Globe and the Post, and we generally watched 5, 6, and oftentimes 10 o'clock news. So many of you were in my homes as I aged, and here I am now. So it's a great honor to be with you. And of course, who else loves us into existence? All the people who put up with us on a daily basis, the people we work with, my great colleagues at 9 PBS, the people who put up with us at the office, our great bosses who guided us and gave us the pathway, who trusted us. It's our families. So my husband and I have been married almost 27 years, which I think because I've been gone a lot, that has probably helped, frankly. Although the pandemic was a bit of a rude awakening, right? We liked each other, it worked out well, so that's good. So thank you to the St. Louis Media History Foundation. Thanks to all of you for loving St. Louis and for being such an extraordinary place to work. We're so lucky to be able to do this work, and I feel so fortunate to be a part of the PBS family. 9 PBS is a really special station in the land of PBS. We walk with swagger when we walk in the room, and it's because of the work that we get to do on your behalf. We're licensed to you, the community. So thank you very much. It's a great honor. Thank you.
Okay, help me out here. Finish the sentence. Don't baste a barbecue. Thank you. How about, I'm a meat man and a meat man knows. Yes, okay. Chances are if you grew up in St. Louis in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, you recognize the work of our next inductee. Charles Bud Hodgson, together with Earl Batts and Hy Newlander, co-founded what would become one of the largest independently owned advertising firms in the St. Louis area, known as BHN. The agency expanded, had offices in Kansas City, Columbia, Springfield, Wichita, Kansas. The firm started in 1950, and its advertising impact is seen right here. You could still tell me those brands. The lore, the phrases are still remembered. Please welcome the son of Bud Hodgson, Jeffrey Hodgson.
Well, Dad would be thrilled beyond words to know this was happening right now. And I'm really happy to have one of his colleagues here to say a few words, Don Hyman's.
One of my favorite public speakers, Jack Buck, used to open every speech with, "I'll make this brief. I'm the only thing standing between you and open bar." Being a media vet, I'm not surprised. The bar remains open. So this is good news. I'll keep it brief anyway. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Don Hemans, and it's my honor to introduce Bud Hodgson tonight. A real tribute to him. Bud would have been so proud to be here with us tonight. And I think the legacy is his family at the table of 4 generations. His son Jeff, his daughter Kathy, and the other 4 generations. Jeannie, of course, and thank you for inviting me and Melanie to be here with you. So Frank, your introduction took us right into it, but I think it's kind of fun to step back because when I started in 1979, advertising, as we know about the printed word, was a little bit different. And to know Bud Hodgson, you have to know BHN. So it was the late 1970s when I began my advertising career, and it was the tail end of what we came to know as Mad Men with John Hamm. It actually did used to look like that. It was good. And back then, and this is the truth, many of us would go into the office to put a finishing touches on an ad campaign at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Literally, if you couldn't get to sleep by 11 or 12, you just go on in. We'd come into the office, and I can still remember like yesterday, literally, you would smell the stale coffee, the cigarettes. Half the people that were there hadn't left from the night before, and the other half were in for the next day. And that's just kind of the way it went. It was passion. You could hear the sound of typewriters clacking along. BHN had a secretary, her name was Josephine Hova. And that was the year in '79 that she won the competition, you won't see this today, for the fastest secretarial typist in the city of St. Louis. 62 words a minute, it was a big deal. So, and back then, the typewriter, you had the original, and what many of the kids don't understand, a carbon copy really had carbon, and it was a copy, and then you put the onion skin behind the carbon copy, and that was the copy. Quick side story, I remember back then, of course, you had no backup of anything that you did, and when we worked on a pitch for a client, it would take months and months, and right before the presentation, it would look a stack kind of like this of everybody's thoughts, everybody's roles, and one of the previous chairmen of BHN, High New Owner, had finished a pitch that he'd been working on for almost 6 months. Before he went home that night, he put it on the corner of his desk and labeled it pitch. And of course, when he came in the next morning, it was gone. It had been pitched. So the thrill of what we get to do today, and again, I understand that 90% of the media and information has now come to us in the last 2 years, not a surprise, but it was different. In addition to that, the new big deal back in 1979 was the roller under glass, where you'd attach a piece of paper and this rolling bar would start to make this whirring sound. It was called the facsimile. And you could take a layout or copy to the publisher in New York in 30 seconds. Never been heard of before. That was the world we knew, and it was changing fast. BHN was founded by Bud Hodgson, High New Owner, and Earl Batts in 1950. Earl Batts died early on, and High New Owner died tragically in 1980, which again seems fairly long ago. It was, but reminding ourselves they were only 30 years into the agency at that time. At that time, Bud reluctantly took the title of chairman and guided us for the next few years for spectacular growth with his unique wit and wisdom. BHN grew to be $43 million, back when that was a lot of money, big. And annual billings in 5 Midwestern offices, as Frank said, with more than 200 employees. Bud and I worked together beginning in 1979 on several notable St. Louis automotive accounts, Moog Automotive, Shure Manufacturing, Hunter Engineering. Again, many of the other notable clients at BHN at the time, Oldsmobile, Wendy's, Union Electric, Watlow Electric, Schnucks, Old Vienna Potato Chips, 7-Up, United Van Lines. Again, Frank, you got to jump on me. So I had remembered some of the fun St. Louis institutions, famous taglines, and back in the day, we used to do something called jingles. That was the Mayros, and naming opportunities. A couple that came to mind that I worked on we had an account called Milnot Condensed Milk, and the tagline read, "If cows could, they would give Milnot." I love it. Malt's Barbecue, Mayro's Deli, and then even back then, as part of the branding process, we would get a naming opportunity as an assignment. The famous Screaming Eagle at Six Flags was named, and a roller coaster today that's still thrilling children and adults almost 50 years later. Not many people know that while growing the business of BHN advertising, Bud also co-founded a popular eatery named Dooley's Limited on 8th Street in the heart of downtown St. Louis. His partner opened it in 1968 and remained open for almost 40 years. Alex Dooley, a Chaminade graduate, had a colorful past. He'd worked in the industry at Tony's, Mayfair Hotel, Reganzi's on the Hill, before a short stint as the manager at the Playboy Club on Windmill. Dooley's made it simple. This is what Bud loved, and you could find he and about 4 of his favorite cohorts from BHN at lunch. Well, let me rephrase that. At the bar with a basket of popcorn. I found this out years later. Dooley's made it simple. 85-cent burgers served on a toasted bun, cooked while you watch, cafeteria style, paid for with cash. TWA once wrote in his in-flight magazine, "Best burger in the world," and it was. Bud taught me a lot about the advertising industry that has stayed with me for 40 years since I left. I call them pearls of wisdom, but then I also remind myself we used to call them Budisms, and these will sound familiar if not in name. Great philosophy, things we didn't learn in school. So just a couple of Budisms. Bud always used to say, if a client calls and says, "Let's have lunch, I'll buy," it's not a good sign. The advertising agency was like that. When we traveled to Las Vegas, he would say, we'd be there for a week, he said, "Count the money in your wallet." This before credit cards. And he said, "Whatever you have left on the way back, that's what you didn't spend on business. That's your receipt." The best. Stand for what's right and believe in it. If the client thought they could do it themselves, they would never have hired us. Never put the client's picture in an ad. It's the first step in the end of a good relationship. You just lost control of the account. Truly. If you have a good account, remember, there are at least another half dozen agencies pitching for the business. Be the best. And the last one, this comes from apparently an experience. If you take a client to an afternoon ball game, don't come back to the office. You won't be at your best. Love that one. On one occasion, I worked unsuccessfully to create a sales meeting theme, which was a big deal for a national manufacturer. Worked on it for 3-4 weeks with Bob Zeidinger, whose wife Jackie is here with us tonight. We couldn't get it sold, and so the chairman said, "I need to see Bud." So a week later, Bob and I went out with Bud, and he said, "Bud, we need a theme." Bud gave him the theme, and he bought it. Done deal, just like that. The part that was breaking all of our heart, we had suggested this 3 weeks early, but he needed to hear from Bud to make it real, and that's just the way Bud was. I made a note here, Bud probably would not have liked the internet and social media so much. He probably never would have been on Facebook or Instagram. Bud was a very good listener, slow to form an opinion, and with good, careful consideration, made thoughtful judgment in every situation. Bud served on the boards of the Advertising Club of St. Louis, the Better Business Bureau. In closing, I just want to say, in trying to remember Bud, he was so smart. He was a great ad man. He was an astute businessman. Mostly, Bud was a gentleman and a gentleman. Qualities we would love to see more of today ourselves. Thank you.
By now, probably everyone in this room has at least one point during the night thought to himself or herself, "I didn't know that." That's the way it is. We're going to have food served pretty soon, and so we'll continue the program while the food is being served. Our next inductee is also an advertising agency co-owner. We're talking about Bill Durham. In 1985, the Simmons-Durham Advertising Agency had its beginning at a kitchen table in Richmond Heights. Talk about low overhead. They had a single account, Jack Daniel's Tennessee Whiskey. In remarkably short order, the enterprise grew to become one of the town's most prominent agencies, taking on a lot of other national advertising accounts: Payday Candy Bars, Heath Candy Bars, Chicken of the Sea Tuna, Charter Communications, now Spectrum, Sears Portrait Studios, Southwestern Bell Mobile, Fox Photo, Jack Daniel's Country Cocktails, Monsanto Wear Dated Carpet, and Southern Comfort. A lot of those there. No one was more instrumental in the acquisition of these accounts. And moving on in the marketplace with them, Simmons Durham, that its president and its chief executive officer, the man we're honoring tonight, Bill Durham. Over the years, Bill and his Simmons Durham teams developed marketing initiatives and creative expressions which helped Jack Daniel's become the top selling whiskey brand in America, and later went international with it. They created print ads, all of those print ads from Lynchburg, Tennessee, television ads for overseas work. It was amazing stuff, and it was all done right here in St. Louis. And an agency started at a kitchen table. For these and countless other achievements in the field of marketing and advertising, we welcome tonight to recognize Bill Durham as a member of the St. Louis Media Hall of Fame in Advertising.
That's me. I wanted to start by saying a few words about how I got to wherever I got. And it was due to some wonderful people who spent a lot of time with me and taught me about marketing and how to write a marketing plan. And what good creative was. And that was pretty easy because Ted Simmons was doing what good creative was. And had made that brand, Jack Daniel's, one of the most important brands in the world, not just the country, but the world, up there with Coca-Cola and a whole lot of others. I actually started to work in this building. It was International Shoe Company. And it was responsible for making me wanting to get into something else as quickly as I possibly could. So I contacted Darcy Advertising, and I had an interview there. And I thought it went pretty well. And I got a call on Thursday afternoon saying that if I wanted the job, I had to pick up a ticket and go to Boston and run the Budweiser boards and have a report back on Sunday. I said, well, that's kind of nice. I appreciate the confidence you have in me, but I have kids that play ball, and I'm not going to miss it this weekend. And they said, adios. And that was okay. And then I went to Gardner. And Gardner, the guy who was head of personnel, was called Whispering Phil. And he was the kind of person that when you interviewed and said anything, he'd always make you say, what? And you'd have to repeat it. And his first question to me was, looking at my resume, was I see Mr. Durham. I love that. I mean, I wasn't 35. And said, well, Mr. Durham, I'm interested in what you majored in college. And I said, well, so was I. And I didn't get a response. He was deadly serious. He said, why would an English major come to Gardner Advertising and think that they should be considered for a job? And I said, I don't know, but the last time I looked, I thought advertising had English in it. And he said, Mr. Durham, I appreciate your effort. One of the other things I've noticed on your resume is that you went to 4 different secondary schools. I said, yeah, that's true. And he said, why in the world did that happen? And I said, well, it's just I was interested in secondary education, which he didn't buy. And he said, I suggest you go and teach English to 6th graders. And I said, thank you very much. That was the end of that discussion. Darcy, that interview went better. They called me, I talked to them on Thursday, and on Friday they said, if you want a job, pick up a ticket and get to Boston and spend the weekend there checking Budweiser outdoor boards. I said, thank you very much, but I'm coaching my son's baseball game. And that was the end of my work with.
Oh, no, it's all good. I just wanted to come up and move a little ahead, because you did that one. Okay.
I did what?
You already did that one.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, you're telling me I'm repeating myself?
No, no.
God forbid.
No. Well, I'm here, and I was your child. You had to repeat yourself a lot.
Yeah, no question. But anyway, while I'm here, I want to thank the guy who really taught me how to write a marketing plan and what was important in marketing. And he's right over there, Glenn Peak. Why don't you stand? Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And then some other friends that had a big impact on me, and if I had any success, I would have to credit them. Ann and Harry Weber. Harry Weber, of course, is a sculptor responsible for many sculptures here in St. Louis, like the Lewis and Clark sculpture, 22 feet high on the Eads Bridge. Anyway, they've been great. And I also want to thank, I just have to tell you a quick story. When I first got the job at Gardner, I reported for work at 6:30, and they had me in an office that faced the alley. I mean, I saw nothing but a wall and an alley. And so I was pecking away at my typewriter, and all of a sudden I heard a noise behind me. And I thought, good God, what's going on here? And I turned around, and there's a man standing on his hands in my office, change dropping out of his pockets. And I thought, good God, what have I done? And he recovered and said, my name's Ralph Hartnagel, and I bet you can't do that. I'm 68 years old. He was unbelievable. And a very funny guy. And I have to tell you one more story about Ralph. Ralph, all he wanted to do, his biggest desire was to go to Rome and the Vatican. He had the misfortune to be a Catholic, and was a very serious Catholic. And anyway, long story short, Charlie Claggett, who was president of Gardner at the time, found out about it and said, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm sending Ralph and Mildred to Rome. And he gave him a ticket, paid for the whole thing. Ralph got his wish, went to the Vatican, and when he came back, he came into my office, and I said, how was it? He said, you wouldn't have believed it. We're walking around the Vatican, and around the corner comes the goddamn Pope. Understand he was not a profane man, that's just the way he was. Anyway, a wonderful man that taught me a lot. let me see, I'm gonna end this now. I think the other person I want to thank is Charlie Claggett. And Charlie Claggett hired me and was one of the most wonderful, genuine, kind, gentle people that ever walked this earth. And then, I think I'm damn near out of jobs here. And the other person that should be recognized is Ted Simmons. Ted Simmons is responsible for making Jack Daniels the one of the top brands in the world. It's in the top 10. This distillery in Newport, Tennessee, is now a worldwide brand, and Ted Simmons did that. He wrote all that copy and did that advertising. Anyway, you may ask what I did. I think that's a very good question, and I'm going to end there. Thank you.
I did. I got to take it home. Okay, the food's coming. Good. Good. You know, there's this theme that runs through every one of our nominees and inductees tonight, and that is stop and think about this happened in St. Louis. This wasn't New York. This wasn't Chicago. We've got people who've won Pulitzer Prizes for work they did here in St. Louis. That's why we're here. Harry Martin. Harry Martin was born in 1873 over the river in Salem, Illinois. His given name was Horace, but everybody called him Harry. That's the way things are in small towns. He studied at Vincennes University, began working at newspapers there back in 1893. The next year, after a year in newspapers in Vincennes, he came to St. Louis and was working as a cartoonist, served as a secretary of official score for the St. Louis Browns. Martin came up with the idea of what would become the Post-Dispatch Weatherbird. It's a single-panel comic strip, made its debut, mark it down, February 11, 1901. The Weatherbird has been handed off to several artists, including Dan Martin, who's in the back of the room, who's now responsible for the Weatherbird every day. Oldest continuously published comic character strip in the country. Started here. The bird was originally named, another good trivia question, Dicky Bird, which was generic slang for any small bird at the time. Harry Martin moved to New York City in 1904, worked for the Pulitzers at their New York World, as well as New York American, New York Globe. He also drew strips for It Happened in Birdland for the New York Globe, and Inbad Taylor for New York American. He worked as a golf journalist and drew sports cartoons, becoming a golf enthusiast, writing 15 books about golf. And one time he was editor of 4 golf magazines. But his most enduring legacy remains the often respected, always original, and usually sassy P.D. Weatherbird, commenting cleverly and concisely on the events of everyday life in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Please join me in honoring the late Harry Martin. Please enjoy your meals as they come. We're rolling with things here tonight. Our next inductee is Dennis Riggs, whose 50-year career has taken him from local TV stations to national networks and international syndication. He's worked locally here in St. Louis, KMX TV, KTVI, KATC, nationally on ABC, CBS, PBS, and internationally in Canada, Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. He's overseas right now on assignment. Under his leadership, HEC, the Higher Education Channel, has received Station of Excellence Emmy Awards from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, a record-setting 3 times. HEC TV is a leading producer of educational, arts, and cultural programming here in the St. Louis metro area. The exclusive interactive broadcast and screencast AG Sig Live is a world leader in creating distance learning opportunities. Dennis also serves on a lot of civic organizations, educational, social, and endowment boards and commissions. He's not here tonight, as I said, he's on assignment, but we didn't want this moment to go unnoticed, so we asked him if he would record a message for us. Please pay attention to the screen.
Dennis Riggs is probably the only person in this room who was chauffeured to his first day of work in television. It's not as impressive as it sounds. He was hired by KFEQ TV in his hometown, St. Joseph, Missouri, as a film editor and floor director. But he was only 14, so his parents drove him to the station until he turned 15 and got a learner's permit. Dennis has witnessed huge changes in our business, from black and white to color, film to videotape, videotape to ENG, which was birthed here in St. Louis, changing TV journalism forever. Dennis was able to use this new technology to talk his way onto the press embargo Delta Queen for an exclusive live interview with President Jimmy Carter. He was told the president himself said, "Let him on, let's see what this is."
As you can see, we made an engine running stop and everything's being unloaded very quickly. That's because shots have been fired around here at the airport, and they want to get this plane in and out as fast as possible.
In between all the fires, murders, council meetings, and normal flotsam and jetsam of local TV news, there have been some memorable times. For 444 days, the world watched as Americans were held hostage in the U.S. Embassy in Iran. When released, the Americans were hidden from the media in the U.S. hospital compound in Wiesbaden, Germany. Dennis scored a global exclusive, getting the first hostage interview. 4 years later, the world watched as terrorists hijacked TWA Flight 847. They sat on the tarmac in Tel Aviv for 17 days, making demands and killing hostages. The end of the drama led to another trip to Wiesbaden and another world exclusive.
Had one of the fellows of the original 8 hijackers, not the original 2, but the original 8, I'm sure you're aware of this on board, who played Russian roulette with me. A la The Deer Hunter, for those of you that have seen that movie, except I got the pistol into the belly. And no one can go through that without fully expecting that you're not going to come out of it alive.
Dennis's groundbreaking coverage of the Covenant Sword and Arm of the Lord white supremacist domestic terrorist group documented a host of illegal activities, including arms trafficking and fugitive smuggling.
He said, quote, "You know, 2 unarmed men could disappear awfully easily in these woods," end quote. We agreed to move down the road. So we moved down here about a mile from their property. If you take a close look, you'll see that we are still under guard. And that young gentleman is armed with a rather high-powered rifle.
It led to congressional hearings and the feds laying siege to the group's compound, forcing all 200 armed members to surrender. It also led to Dennis and his family living under police protection until all the cult leaders were apprehended. Videographer Dave Sharp and Dennis were the Flood brothers of the Great Flood of '93. They were up to their necks in water and in a 2-page spread in the U.S. News and World Report. After a paralyzing aneurysm and a battle with the same cancer that killed Steve Jobs, Dennis was asked to lend his experience to HEC TV, a moribund telecourse channel with the instructions to make something of it or shut it down. Thanks to a talented and dedicated team today, HEC TV is St. Louis's leading producer of education, arts, and cultural programming, the world leader in interactive distance learning, and honored with countless local, regional, national, and international awards.
Good evening, friends and colleagues. I'm sorry I can't be there with you tonight, but as a member of the working media, I'm on assignment in Europe right now. We're going to be hearing a lot about the media in the coming months, so a tutorial. Fake news means, damn, the truth hurts. And enemies of the people translates as, would you guys just stop doing your job so well? Keep in mind, a professional media with professional management working with ethical ownership is truly the light that keeps democracy from dying in the darkness. Thank you for this honor, and thank you for all you do.
My congratulations to all of you. We're at the halfway point. No one has snored or fallen asleep. So we'll reward you with a break and be back at 8:15 to do it all again. As far as this break is concerned, take care of whatever nature wishes you to take care of. Stop at the bar. Stop at the auction tables. We love that. And we'll reconvene at 15 past the hour. I don't know how many of you had a chance to visit the table immediately outside the door here. That has a fraction of the stuff that we've managed to collect over the years. It's kind of a representation of what our archive is all about. We want to preserve stuff that nobody else is because we want people to know in the future what life was like now and before now. And it's a big task, but just to give you an example, a year or so ago, I was speaking to the Missouri Broadcasters Association meeting, and I mentioned that we had a tape of a radio announcer on a radio station who was broadcasting a sock hop. And I realized after I said that most of the people I was talking to had never heard of a sock hop and had probably never seen a 45 RPM record in their lives. So we're preserving that kind of stuff for the future. Our next inductee into the Halls of Fame is Jack Rice. Jack was a native of Shelbina, Missouri, a small town in the northeastern corner of the state. He worked for the Post for 27 years. His newspaper career began in 1940. He was a sports writer for the Star-Times. His talent in writing took him to the Globe, and then he finally joined the Post in 1954. He covered the old St. Louis Browns, the baseball Cardinals until 1959, when Jack moved to the feature section of the Post-Dispatch and began writing a regular column that became one of the most important items in the newspaper. Then editorial page editor William Wu said that Rice was one of, quote, the finest writers that the Post has ever had. He was an exceedingly careful craftsman, language worker. His work was filled up with all kinds of keen observations, personality, character, and just downright humor in a wry sort of way. He retired back in 1980 due to his health problems and died in 1983 at the age of 60. To recognize Jack and his work tonight, we call to his, shall we say, one of his wives. She wants to be known, Florence Schinkel. Florence, please come up.
Jack had 3 wives and a lot of girlfriends. And while he really loved his Corvair, his 1965 Corvair, he did not like horses. All his girlfriends and wives loved horses. Thought I'll put this in. But so when I came to the Post-Dispatch in 1970, I was 24, fresh out of college in journalism education, and I was a really timid, rule-following writer. Jack Rice was really pretty famous as a sports writer and was then, at this time, a celebrated columnist who routinely wrote all the primary sacred rules of journalism. You know those like, you know these, Harry? Tell the reader at the start what you're planning to write about and stay on topic. His fans never complained, or only one time. His fans cheered his lawlessness most all the time. Okay, just to show you the kind of writing he would wander off and do was one of his most famous narrative digressions came in the middle of a 1953 cards game. It was Cards with the Pirates, and it was getting boring, and that's always bad in the press box when things get boring. Okay, so Jack's attention wandered to the fate of a stray dog who'd somehow gotten onto the playing field. Would that dog make it to second base? Would he even make it home? The fans were rooting, and yay, the dog got home safe. Everybody was happy, except one man obviously didn't like the dog so much. He called up our sports editor, Roy Stockton, who was an emperor. And he told Stockton that You wrote that whole story and Jack never put what the final score between the Dodgers and Stockton, and this is my favorite part, who enjoyed Jack's digressions, said, well, we ran it in the final in the box score, didn't we? That was that, you know. Anyhow, I'm repeating a little bit of this. Jack was born in Shelbyne, Missouri in 1923, and the human population there was 800, and there were a lot more cows. On the surface, it looked like it was going to be limited origins for a would-be writer, but it was really green pastures. For one thing, there was sandlot baseball everywhere, and it was at a time when it's almost impossible to tell you how important baseball was to the American consciousness. And Jack was not very good, but he played diligently at every single position, and he came out of it writing that I learned exactly what a good player in a tight situation would do. He also got narrative instruction from the country newspapers. They were terrific. I just want to give you an example from one of the most famous ones. I'm digressing like Jack did, but the Monroe Appeal moved over to Paris, Missouri, and it was Jack's favorite paper right next door. And one day it didn't rain, and weeks passed, it still didn't rain. And so somebody went up and told John Blanton that he had to do something on this paper. He was the publisher, and he should do something about the paper and fix it. So he got down there and put a banner headline down that said, Lord, we confess our sins, we are sorry, we pray for rain. And so help me, the paper came out the next hour, and it was pouring rain. And so John Blanton became important. And I think they learned that kind of wisecracking approach. You know, when you're really, really aware over years of knowing people, what they're looking for, you know also what you can get away with. Anyhow, after a tour of duty earnings and one with his father wanted him to be for St. Louis University. Beginning in 1940, Jack was a sports writer for all three St. Louis dailies. He was oh gosh, that's exciting. Beginning in 1940, Jack was a sports writer for all three St. Louis dailies, St. Louis Star-Times, Globe, Democrat, and Post-Dispatch. He joined the Post full-time in 1954. In 1959, he estimated he'd done 1,000 games during his reporting there. And finally, he got to be a columnist, and he loved that job. It was, think of the column as a road backwards and forwards from where he'd been living with his past and where he thought we were going. And he was a good writer, painting portraits and so on. And he also got a chance, we asked him, since he had all these girlfriends who loved horses, we asked him if he didn't want to go to a society horse show and write about us, but he didn't, because Gussie Bush was there sitting on a comfy bus where Gussie sat when he could write, when he could watch his horses. And they sat and talked about their relative transportation. So we had Gussie Bush's bus, and we had the column, the Corvair over talking about which was more practical and worth more and so on. And we never got any horse coverage at all. None of us girls got any horse coverage. All right, so we took him home. When he died, we took him home in his chariot, in his Corvair, and we buried him in the town cemetery on the hill above the Sandlot baseball. And I really like to think how right the circle of his life was, leaving that green world with all the gifts that it gave him, and coming home and being restored there. And I think he would have really written a good column about that. Thank you.
I would just like to confirm what Florence said about the Cardinals and their popularity. Having grown up in Nashville, Illinois, back in the day when air conditioning was not prevalent, you could walk down the street and through the screen doors and the screened windows, you could follow Harry Carey for blocks, following the baseball game as he broadcast on the summer nights in a small town. Our next inductee is Carol Daniel. Really? You're in at KMOX for 26 years? Oh, Carol. She's the immediate past president of the Greater St. Louis Area Association of Black Journalists, currently co-anchor of Morning Drive Time. Wow, you've done them all, haven't you? Yeah. She began her career back in '95 as an anchor, reporter, talk show host, which is the way things are in radio. You do whatever they tell you. Program director Tom Langmeyer had been driving 55 to Memphis and heard Carol on a station in Cape Girardeau and thought, she's good. And so when he got a chance, he called her. And I'm sure, you get calls like this all the time. And Cape Girardeau was heard by the prisoners over in Chester, so they probably made their phone calls there too. But long and short, he said, I'd like to talk to you. And a couple of weeks later, she's here in St. Louis. That's the way things happen sometimes. Carol has a wealth of experience. She hasn't always been in radio. She's been a campaign organizer, recruiter for the U.S. Census Bureau, and a substitute teacher. She's been honored by the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, Missouri Broadcasters Association, GSLADJ, yes, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Monsanto YMCA, lots of other organizations. Long story short, she's done everything. This woman has no time to herself. She won the National Newspaper Association Award for her column Carol's Journal, which ran in the St. Louis American for nearly 10 years. Television, yeah, that too. Helped to launch the Emmy-winning program on Channel 4, Great Day St. Louis, where she was a co-host for 4 years. She's a military brat. Born and raised at Fort Leonard Wood, her dad retired after 27 years in the U.S. Army. She's a member of New Life in Christ Interdenominational Church in O'Fallon, Illinois, where she and Patrick, her husband, served in and launched their couples ministry, Journey to Oneness, for 10 years. I could go on, but I'm going to let her talk to you. Carol Daniel.
Thank you, Frank. And thank you for seeing me, Frank. Thank you for everything you've always said and done to encourage me. My husband said to me, have you written something? And I said, no. And so he turned over a piece of paper and said, write something now, because Sharon Stevens said, 2 minutes, Carol, 2 minutes. And I said, Sharon, I can't do that. I am a motivational speaker. I am for hire, by the way, if your organization in fact does need someone. Reasonable will be the fee. I remember talking, or rather debating, with my program director recently, and I used the word truth. And he said, well, that depends. Journalism is in a little bit of trouble, but it is nothing we can't handle with the written and the spoken word. As you can see, I am a woman. I am a Black woman. I am a mother, and I am a wife. My career as a journalist has always filtered through those very important facts. I'm not the one who wanted to be a reporter since I was a kid like Sharon Stevens, who actually did her first interview in elementary school, true story. I wanted to be a stewardess. I wanted to be a model, and then I realized I was only 5'4", and they didn't hire women like me. And so I knew those things weren't going to happen, but mostly I wanted to be a mother. I didn't come to journalism actually until college. I did grow up listening to Wolfman Jack, and so there was a moment in my career where I wanted to be, in my life, I wanted to be a DJ, a jazz DJ, because I love jazz. And then I realized there aren't that many jazz radio stations, so maybe that won't work either. What I truly do love is information. I love telling stories. I love a great interview when the guest says, that's a great question. That's a Super Bowl moment for reporters. Friday, the new head of the FBI St. Louis came into the KMOX newsroom to sit down with me for a face-to-face interview. We talked for 40 minutes. It will air Tuesday between 9 and 10 a.m. on KMOX 1120 a.m., by the way. And then maybe half an hour later, the offensive tackle for the Miami Dolphins, a Cahokia high school grad, came in for a sit-down interview. That lasted about an hour. I love that every day is different and that I get a chance to talk to anyone and everyone. I love information. My son's eyes glaze over when I say, I read in an article, I read a study. Like, okay, here comes another study, another article that she read. Hey, let's all read, shall we? Can we just read? There's information in those words, there really is. What I love about information is that getting an answer is as important as the question. I also love the clock. We in radio know the clock. Those who know me know that I'm often late. Looking at my sister-in-law, she knows it. Looking at my husband, he knows it. By the way, these are little words. I'm not doing so well with them, but these are very tiny words. But doing a newscast, there is nothing like walking in and walking up to a CBS update and hitting it. There's nothing like that feeling. Absolutely nothing. Or the feeling that everything in your newscast has come together. Every actuality or piece of audio plays when it is supposed to. That every live hit goes off without a hitch. This career has not been easy. Nothing is. I've been told a lot lately that I'm intimidating, and I've decided to lean into that. Actually, I've decided not to care about that at all. Because the fact is that if I am intimidating, that would be your problem and not mine. So I'm over that as I turn 60 in March. I am very much over that. And because this journey has not been easy, there are many people I know, and I've been very vocal with them, that they helped me through it. I have 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister. One of my brothers, Colonel Al Keeler, retired Air Force, and his wife, Stephanie, who retired from 32 years of teaching, are here tonight. I once told them, I can make the words bigger. I just made the words bigger. I once told them that I wanted them to raise my sons. My husband and I both said this. We wanted them to raise our sons because they are great parents. They've been married how many years? Al? 38 years they have been married, 38 years. They are incredible parents and great people and community activists, and they have always been there for me. I love you both. My news director, Beth Coughlin, who, like Amy Shaw, is the first woman to lead the KMOX newsroom in its 90-year history, is here as well. Beth, who I met at Channel 4 while working on Great Day St. Louis. Beth is a true visionary who has both inspired me and helped me to work through my strengths and my weaknesses. Maria Kina and Michael Calhoun are 2 colleagues in our newsroom who are truly family. I'm still waiting for the party on the patio at Maria's house. It's gonna happen. And by the way, Maria made a cake for my birthday, my 60th birthday. And I said, Maria, where'd you buy this icing? I'm gonna go buy it. I made that from scratch. So not only a news anchor and a reporter award-winning, quite the baker indeed. And I do need a tub. I told her I would swim in that icing. And honey, the reason I was often late coming home from the newsroom was because I was talking about St. Louis politics and life in general with these 2. They are absolutely family. My colleagues at that table right there, the Greater St. Louis Association of Black Journalists. Come on, give it up, give it up, give it up. They actually let me lead for several years. I'd never led anything. I was president of the high school class, and that only means you choose the high school theme and maybe the theme for the prom and the song that you'll play at the prom. That's all that meant in high school, but leading the Greater St. Louis Association of Black Journalists meant so much more. And I am honored still to be associated with such incredible people who are history making in their own right in that organization. To Sharon and Adela, who are my big sisters indeed, thank you for being my sounding board always. We can talk and call at any time over any issue, and I know that I will get the best advice, the absolute best advice. To be surrounded by people you know you will get the best advice from is a blessing indeed. PJ and Marcus, none of this means anything at all to me. doesn't mean a thing. It means nothing to me. If you aren't happy and whole, you are truly my greatest blessings and my greatest accomplishment. And they know this because I've told both of them, and they probably don't, maybe they remember, I hope they do, that when they were in trouble, and they often were, I would say to them, what happens when I get to heaven and God says, what did you do with the gift that I gave you? And I remember Marcus looking around like, what gift are you talking about? You were the gift that we asked God for. We asked God for children, and you're the ones that he gave us. You're the gift. This is great, but you're the gift that I asked God for. The last gift that I asked God for when I turned 30, I said, Lord, I've done it. I tried to find him. I have messed it up. I'm going to let you do it, Lord. And 6 months later, I met Patrick Daniel. 6 months, y'all. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Patrick walks in a room. We've been married 27 years, and I still stop and stare. I still look at him, and I wonder, how did I pull that? I say to him, if I looked as good as you, I wouldn't talk to me. But today I say, after the $90 makeup job, I do look good today. I do look good today. He is my greatest critic, which you really should be with each other that you love, but he's my greatest supporter as well. He has listened to me talk about my day when it's good and especially when it's bad. He would say to me, this is what you need to do. And then, because we taught couples counseling or couples classes at our church for 10 years, he stopped saying, this is what you need to do. Because men, your wives don't want to hear you say, this is what you should do. They just want you to listen. They just want you to listen. And so he listens because there is a lot to say about all that goes on in a newsroom. This is a great honor indeed. It's a great organization indeed to recognize what we've done in this city, in this industry, for these people who call St. Louis home. But it honestly means nothing without our loved ones. I love you, Patrick. I love you, Al. I love you, Steph. I love you, PJ. I love you, Marcus. I love you, Beth. I love you, Jess. I love you, Jess. I love you, Trisha. I love you, Michael. I love you, Maria. I love you, Sharon. I love you, Adela. I love you all. And I love this job. Thank you so much.
Now comes a time when you learn about people you have never heard of. But pay attention, because these were very accomplished people. Herbert B. Swope, a journalist in St. Louis and for the New York World, was the first recipient of the Pulitzer Prize for Reporting in 1917, a series of articles called Inside the German Empire. He was known for saying, I can't give you a surefire formula for success, but I can give you a formula for failure. Try to please everybody all the time. He's also credited with coining the phrase, the Cold War. Swope established the first modern op-ed page in 1921. He took over as editor of The World in New York in 1920 and realized that the page opposite the editorial page carried things like book reviews, society boilerplate, obituaries. He said, and I quote, it occurred to me that nothing is more interesting than opinion when opinion is interesting. So I devised a method of cleaning off the page opposite the editorial, which became the most important in America. And thereon I decided to create opinions and ignore facts. Swope was editor of the New York World's 21-day crusade against the Ku Klux Klan in 1921 that won that newspaper the Pulitzer Prize for Public Service in 22. The series ranked 81st among the top 100 journalism stories of the 20th century by New York University's journalism department. He was a legendary poker player. At one time, he won $470,000 in a game with an oil baron, a steel magnate, and an entertainer. Imagine that as a journalist. Swope was a member of a social club, the precursor of Algonquin's Round Table. It was called the Thanatopsis Inside Straight and Pleasure Club. He was inducted into the Croquet Hall of Fame of the United States Croquet Association in 1979, and his son was in 1981. Please welcome Barbara Singer, who is here to represent the family of Herbert Swope. Barbara?
Herbert Bayard Swope gave journalism a good name. To Swope's credit, he was a great reporter. He was an editor with wit and originality, and a man with passions that ran so deep and wide that resulted in enormous contributions to journalism. To St. Louis's credit, it provided the nurturing for bigger things to come, a life that few of us can imagine. Though he ultimately became the quintessential New Yorker, his St. Louis ties, primarily the Pulitzers, were key to his success on the global stage. I became fascinated by Mr. Swope's life when reading about his involvement with the famed members of the Algonquin Round Table. And then I read a biography that portrayed a man who was admired by a wide swath of accomplished professionals from all walks of life for his journalistic integrity and his sheer exuberance of life. A life in journalism, namely as a longtime editor of the New York World, would have been enough for most people, but not for Mr. Swope. During retirement, he served the U.S. government in diverse advisory roles as chairman of the New York State Racing Board for 11 years, and as a consultant to U.S. Secretary of War Henry Stimson. He also became a power broker before that term was ever created. And Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter called Mr. Swope the creator of statesmen. Wow, you could use that now. Next time you read an op-ed page, please think of Mr. Swope as the originator, and smile when you remember how he answered his phone. This is Swope, Swope of the world. Truer words were never spoken. I'm delighted to accept his honor for his granddaughter, Tracy Swope. She asked me to share with you the following. So sorry I cannot be there to celebrate all of the honorees. It hurts me deeply, but life circumstances just won't allow it. I have to remain in Los Angeles to finish a film and attend to a very sick rescue pup that sadly I cannot leave at this time. I would have so much liked to have been there to receive this great honor on behalf of my grandfather. I know he would have given a most eloquent thank you if he had been here on earth to receive it. So from wherever he is, thank you all so very much.
Jim Rothschild worked for 32 years in his hometown as one of the most talented colleagues in the broadcasting business. In the early years, he won nearly a dozen Mid-America Emmys and the George Foster Peabody Award. After 3 years at KTVI, Jim was hired by Alan Cohen, GM Channel 4, and that was the beginning of 28 years at KMOX-TV, working closely with Mr. Cohen. Jim's creativity and attention to accuracy and detail helped that Channel 4 build the highest rated late newscast in the country. And the station eventually became the highest rated CBS affiliate in any major market. His consistent production of special projects, local programming, have helped to shape and improve the broadcast industry, as well as to serve the audiences here in St. Louis. Jim, come on up.
I'm not going there. I am a lucky man. I just want to tell you, a very lucky man in this industry and in my life. I rode the roller coaster of the changes in the broadcasting industry for over 30 years at 2 stations and 7 owners. During those years, I was lucky enough to work side by side with some of the most creative and talented, most dedicated broadcast professionals anywhere. Starting at my time at KTVI in the late 70s, there was Carol Williams, Don Wells, Chuck Neff, and others that went on to big careers nationally. Then, as Frank mentioned, in 1981, Alan Cohen at Campbell TV found me in the gutter. True. It's a true story, but that's a story for another time. But over the next 28 years, Alan taught me so much and gave me the opportunity to use the power of Channel 4 to serve my hometown. So I do have to thank Alan tonight. Here are just some examples of some of the things we did at Channel 4, special productions and projects over the 30 years. We produced documentaries featuring Forest Park Forever, the St. Louis Symphony, and the amazing Max Starkloff. We brought the VP Parade, the Thanksgiving Parade, the Cardinals and the Rams victory parades into the homes of viewers. We sponsored the Forest Park Balloon Race. We televised the St. Louis Variety Club's telethons, created award-winning children's programs like Dee Dee's Delight and Gator Tales, and created the 24-hour news, a branding strategy that was copied by more than 50 stations around the country. Speaking of our news, as Frank said, we were very proud to make it the highest rated 10 o'clock news, late news, anywhere in the country. I must say, it was a lot of fun, and I am lucky. But tonight, my luck continues because I'm sharing tonight with a select group of Channel 4 alumni and some of the most talented colleagues and some of my favorite people. Polly Birch, Dan Dillon, Tom Rogers, and here from her home in Colorado, Liz Moulton. But others contributed to my success at Channel 4. They couldn't be here tonight, but Paul Fay, Steve Hamill, Susan Silver, and John Vogt, just to name a few. Needless to say, we'd be here all night if I ran through all the special people I got to work with. I said I was lucky, and that's an understatement. Along with a great run professionally, I'm blessed with 3 of the most remarkable children imaginable, raised right here in St. Louis. My daughter Lindy is here tonight. My daughter Drew is in Dallas with her new baby girl Elliot, and my son Corey's in Chicago waiting for the arrival anytime now of my 5th grandchild. Am I lucky? You bet. And finally, speaking of lucky, the other half of us is here tonight, and I love you. I want to thank the foundation, and I want to thank all the extraordinary professionals I was lucky enough to work with. Working in local TV was a great career, and it still is. The media are under attack today, but this country needs strong local TV and radio stations. Like those here in St. Louis, to thrive, we need them to thrive and keep telling the truth no matter what. Congratulations to the other deserving inductees, and thank you.
Our next inductee spent his career promoting the king of beers. I don't have to tell you what that is. Ray Cranes worked in advertising for Anheuser-Busch beginning in 1935, rose to the role of advertising manager for Budweiser from 1950 until 1969. Where there's life, there's blood. Pick a pair. Branding statements, Ray Cranes. It's as simple as that. He was on the board of directors of the Media Club, received the Silver Medal Award of the St. Louis chapter of the Ad Federation of America. After his retirement, he was a volunteer job procurement and placement manager at the 1969 National Alliance of Businessmen campaign, trying to find jobs for people who weren't fortunate enough to be employed. Ray graduated from St. Louis University in 1926. He was a member of the President's Council of the school, served as vice chairman of the PR committee. He received the St. Louis U Alumni Merit Award in 1962. Ray was a member of the Board of Governors of Catholic Charities. Ray was married to the former Alice Jolly for 35 years until his death in 1969. They have 3 daughters, Mary Alice Brummer, Carol Ann Hodes, and Catherine Jane Jacobs-Meyer, 9 grandchildren, 15 great-grandchildren. His grandson, Joe Hodes, is here to accept the award tonight. Joe?
Well, thank you so much to the St. Louis Media History Foundation. Just a quick note on the impact of the foundation's work. My grandfather died before I was born, but thanks to the Media History Foundation's YouTube channel, I was able, and you can now hear my grandfather talk about his career and give some advice for admin as the speaker for Anheuser-Busch Day at the St. Louis Ad Club in 1968. Audio of the speech is set to a montage of images from the event and of Ray's text of the speech, along with his notes and reworkings of the copy. Many thanks to Ken Olmeyer for putting it together so that I and others can see the meticulous care that my grandfather put into his public presentations and benefit from his wisdom from 35 years at an amazing time in the ad business. His faith was very important to him as well as his work. He was a devout Catholic and a prominent layman. He was active in his home parish's Perpetual Adoration Society, the White House Retreat League, the Sarah Club, to encourage priestly vocations and Catholic charities. As a speaker, he was frequently in demand to expound on his faith in God and his country and his belief in a revitalized St. Louis in the 1960s. However, it was Ray the man who left a mark on his family and those who knew him. A favorite story concerns the great Jack Buck's first trip to the brewery's executive offices after being hired as the Card's play-by-play man. Ray was concerned that the new guy's wardrobe wasn't leaving a good first impression. So he gave a Darcy account manager his personal charge card, I think for Boyd's, for those of you who remember Boyd's, to buy Jack Buck a big league wardrobe to go with his big league job. When Ray retired, he was presented with a loving portrait covered with signatures of his colleagues and dedicated to the finest man we've ever worked with. One great regret for all of us was that Ray passed away in 1969 at the age of 65, only 6 months after retiring from AV. Jack Buck delivered a eulogy for Ray on KMOX radio, a eulogy penned by Ray's good friend and fellow St. Louis Advertising Hall of Famer Wally Armbruster. In part, Wally wrote, "If you didn't know Ray Krings, I'm sorry, you should have. Everybody should have. If there is no patron saint of businessmen, I nominate Ray, and 1,000 people who worked with him, fought with him, and heard him speak will rise to second the motion. Ray was a live commercial for God and the best in men." On behalf of Ray's family, thank you very much for honoring him and helping more people get to know this wonderful man. Thank you.
I would like to note, for those of you who would like to take advantage of this, that Ken Olmeyer is recording everything visually that's happening tonight, and that will be streamed on YouTube at some point after he recovers from all of the work he's had to do here. Okay, let's see. Education time again. You need to hear about this man because he's not known by very many people in St. Louis. His name is Elmer Sims Campbell. He was born in St. Louis, the son of teachers. His father was assistant principal at Sumner High, but he died when Elmer was only 4 years old, and his mom moved to Chicago, where he eventually graduated from Englewood Tech Prep Academy. He was a cartoonist for the high school newspaper, enrolled in the University of Chicago, then transferred to the Art Institute of Chicago, During a job as a railroad car dining waiter, Campbell sometimes drew caricatures of the train passengers. One of those passengers, impressed by his work, gave him a job at Triad Studios in St. Louis. He was there for 2 years. Then he moved to New York City in 1929, found some work at a small advertising firm there, and began to take classes at the National Academy of Design and contributed his work to various magazines. Following the suggestion of a cartoonist named Russell Patterson to focus on good girl art, Campbell created his Harem Girls, a series of watercolor cartoons that attracted the attention of the first issue of Esquire magazine in 1933. Campbell's artwork was in almost every issue of Esquire from 1933 to 1958, and he was the creator of that magazine's mascot, Esky, the stealth cartoon character with a silky top hat. He contributed to the Chicagoan, Cosmopolitan, Ebony, New Yorker, Playboy, Opportunity, a Journal of Negro Life, and Red Book. His commercial artwork for advertising included illustrations for Barbasol, Spring Maid, and Art Schaffner and Marx. Elmer Sims Campbell died in 1971. Please honor our new inductee, Elmer Sims Campbell. And the education continues because several years ago, I wrote a piece about a man who in his young days built a radio transmitter and broadcast the first radio broadcast in St. Louis. That didn't go very well with a lady who lives in St. Louis because she felt that I had not included all of the necessary details. So I did some research based upon what she said, and I found out she was right. So we're setting the record straight tonight. I learned on November 2nd, 1920, William E. Woods made St. Louis's first radio broadcast. He was the first announcer in St. Louis. 1920, he broadcast the results of the presidential election from his home on Detente Street in South St. Louis. Wide world of the airwaves heard him. Estimated 2,000-mile radius of this transmitter that he and Lester Benson had built. They were in their 20s when they built this. Radio wasn't even a thing then. There were no radio stations on the air then, but they built this thing and made it work. These broadcast bulletins here in St. Louis from South St. Louis reached Little Rock, Arkansas, Ellendale, North Dakota, and other outside towns, as the Post-Dispatch reported the next day. The news also reached Mrs. Woods. She was in a hospital bed in St. Louis that night. A wireless telephone receiving station, as they called it, had been set up in her room so she could hear the election returns. The technology was so novel that the paper struggled to find the vocabulary to describe it. The word radio appeared one time in their news report when they called him a radio expert, although it described their device as a wireless telegraph sending apparatus. And you may have thought that KDK in Pittsburgh was the first radio station to broadcast this stuff. Happens that on the same night, these gentlemen were doing it in South St. Louis. The difference was KDKA was owned by Westinghouse, which had a very strong public relations department. I'm told, although I've not been able to confirm it, that Westinghouse's KDKA signed off the air before the election was actually decided. Here in St. Louis, William Woods stayed on the air and was able to broadcast that Harding won that presidential election. After that night, things pretty much took off in St. Louis. That was 1920, and WEW signed on the air with its first regular broadcast in April of 1922. KSD followed a few days later, so we had two radio stations on the air. Woods and Benson built both of their transmitters. These were 25-year-old kids. I say kids, of course, in the vernacular. The lady who set me straight was his granddaughter, Sue Matterson. She wanted to attend tonight. She came down with a positive test, and so we have to, in absentia, honor her grandfather, William Woods. Born in Independence, Missouri, in 1885, Charlie Ross attended the town's public schools, graduated in 1901. Among the 41 seniors who graduated with him was a man named Harry Truman. That autumn, at 16, Ross enrolled at the University of Missouri Columbia. At age 16, he graduated Phi Beta Kappa in 1905. Went to work full-time at the weekly Columbia Herald. The next year, he joined the Post-Dispatch, his primary paper with few interruptions. He did stop for a while to include a teaching spell at the new School of Journalism at NU. But the balance of his career was with the Post. By the end of World War I, he was back at the Post-Dispatch as its Washington bureau chief. Sound familiar, folks? Washington Bureau. Ross's PD position in Washington brought him national prominence. He covered the presidency, became well acquainted with Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, and FDR. He even earned a 2,000-word pat on the back from Coolidge, which was published in the 50th anniversary issue of the Post-Dispatch. He returned to St. Louis in 1934 with a Pulitzer Prize awarded for 1931's series, The Country's Plight, What Can Be Done About It? He helped steer the paper in the Post to a more central editorial position, and the editorials were critical of Truman's connection with Tom Pendergrass, the boss in Kansas City. When the New Deal's initiatives diminished during the next years, Pulitzer sent him back to Washington, and in 1939, he stayed there till 1945. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This is a newspaper man. Upon the death of Roosevelt, President Truman overlooked those editorials of the Post-Dispatch and asked Ross to become his press secretary. However, Ross's physical condition soon deteriorated, and on December 5th of 1950, he passed away at his desk in the White House. We're honoring tonight Charles Ross. Now, I have said tonight that St. Louis is really an amazing town in terms of what came out of here. And we're talking about media history. Just a couple of personal notes. What we're collecting in our archive is not just media history. It's a history of life. You will be able to, once we're complete, go to our archive and listen to radio broadcasts that go back to 1928 here in St. Louis. When you listen to those broadcasts, you don't have to be a broadcaster to appreciate what life was like, what they were talking about on the radio back in those days. You can hear World War II broadcasts from KMOX as the radio announcer tells people at the 10 o'clock news what was going on in World War II. You can look at an advertising collection that numbers thousands of ads that were created here in St. Louis by agencies that you probably don't even know of. One of those agencies you should know about, and that's who we're honoring tonight. We're inducting CORE, C-O-R-E, and the founders, J.C. Dillon, Mark Kemper that is, and the brothers Keith and Eric Tilford, into the Hall of Fame. We're honoring their contribution for what they've done for national advertising from St. Louis in the 1990s. Founded in 95, CORE was a nationally recognized creative force that shook up the advertising scene. That's an understatement. All the way through the early 2000s, with an edgy style and the attitude to match, CORE was uncompromising in their approach to work. Ad agencies who competed against CORE speak of them with admiration for their creative work and what they accomplished. After 3 years of gaining national attention, CORE became a member of Ogilvy and Mather, which is a syndicate collection of boutique ad agencies. CORE boasted national clients like Miller Brewing Company in St. Louis. Yes, CORE did it. They had Nike, Epiphone Guitars, Remington, Monsanto. Their work advertising and promoting the St. Louis Post-Dispatch won numerous creative awards and gained additional national exposure for the agency. They dissolved officially in 2010. Dillon, Kemper, and the Tilford brothers have all gone on to other agency leadership roles, if you will. I'm going to sit back here now and let these guys talk. Come on up.
Hi everyone, my name's Todd Dillon, so I'm actually the son of JC Dillon right here, and thank you. And the four partners asked me to speak on their behalf, and this is actually truly fitting that we're going last here. So I'll try to keep it quick though, because I know it's been a long evening, but what these guys in this agency accomplished is something that is super special. I got a complete view of the whole thing. I was an 8th grader when they opened, and then I actually got to work there towards their latter years. But CORE was not just your typical ad agency or design firm. It was the ultimate playground for creativity. There were no limits, zero hierarchy. These guys would be cleaning up the dishes, sweeping the floors, doing everything. They were sitting among the floor. They weren't in some faraway office. Everyone was valued. Everyone was special. Everyone brought something to the table, and everyone's ideas were important. These guys had one simple mission, and that was to make as much great work as humanly possible. And the amount of work that they did create in their short time was amazing and hugely, hugely influential. So in their 15-year run, they went from designing Schlafly's original logo so they could stock their legendary CORE bar. They were one of the first agencies to have like a legit full bar. They went from doing that to, they touched on it, but brands like Apple, Miller, Gucci, Pontiac, Karl Lagerfeld, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Panera, Maserati. I mean, the list is just crazy. And this was from St. Louis, Missouri in the 90s and 2000s. So they started off as masters of print and copy, and then they merged into masters of tech and storytelling and video. One of the big things they did was in the early 2000s, I think it was around 2004, the Mac G4 came out, Macintosh computer, and that really changed everything for CORE. So now they didn't have to use production houses and editing suites. They could do everything in-house on their own. So from conception to completion, everything was in-house. They became kind of the special forces of advertising. So, I mean, you name it, design, direction, motion graphics, editing, strategy, writing, packaging, print, digital, branding, and many other things. They could do it all. They could do it better. They could do it cheaper and better than everyone. So I was, again, lucky enough to kind of see everyone who went through the door in those 15 years. And really, CORE is just, it's all about its people. And the people that pass through there are some of the most influential, inspirational people you could ever meet. Just to throw a couple out there, just to show you guys like what these people are doing now since CORE folded. There's Brian Rouse, who's now the executive creative director and partner at 72 and Sunny, which might be like the hottest shop in the world right now. You have Greg Chadwick, who's actually right back there. He was creative director at Media Arts Lab, also at 72 and Sunny, working on Apple and Google and things for Justin Timberlake. Tony Gaddis and John Lutchins and Todd Hippensteel, who's also back here, as well as the Tilford brothers. CORE people continue to collaborate. They worked on things like, I don't know if you guys know Mac Miller, one of the biggest rappers and hip hop artists come out in the last 10 years, but they have a music video they made for him that has 110 million views. So yeah, so the CORE's ideas, CORE's design, CORE's everything still continues to this day. It's a long-lasting legacy. Anyone who walked through those doors and got to be a part of it is forever changed by it and will forever continue to change the world because of it. CORE allowed everyone just the freedom to create and encouraged everyone to do it. So everyone lived it day to day. There was many long nights, early mornings, but it didn't matter. Everyone was family, everyone was bought in, everyone knew they were creating something special. Sometimes people described them as maybe cult-like, maybe they were. But still this day, when I tell someone I worked at CORE, or someone found out about this award that was happening and they said, your dad worked at CORE, it still sparks people near and far. They touch the world, honestly. And they're a bunch of legends, and I'm super, super grateful that I get to speak on behalf of them. So with that, I'm just gonna close it by saying thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone who was at CORE. Thank you to the wives, the husbands, the kids who put up with the long hours and were also a huge part of CORE, always there. And just long live CORE.
Last but not least, some housekeeping information for all of you. On your way out, check the auction table if you've gotten involved. If you're the high bidder, take the paper and come up to the table here and pay for it. We need the money. I'm not proud. I am very thankful and very grateful to all of you for coming tonight, and to my board of directors who made this a reality. They've worked hard. They've gotten thanks from me. I appreciate them. I appreciate all of you. Congratulations to all the Hall of Fame members. Just enjoy the night, folks. Tell a lot of stories.